How big is your world? I say this not as a challenge, or necessarily as a question of your fealty to what you believe in, but I ask this: how big is your world? And perhaps I can answer it with another question. Riddle me this: what becomes more valuable the less that you have of it? The answer is friends. How does this apply? The smaller your world, the more that which is in it is valuable. The value of that which is in your world becomes greater. Sadhus, yogis, wise men, they downsize their world in order to understand the smaller bits, so that the smaller bits mean more, but also because when you understand the smaller parts of your world, you have a grander grasp of what is beyond, what that which means most to you holds significance in your heart. What happens when you raise a kitten in a house and it never goes outside? If you take the kitten in your arms and then you walk outside, there's that sensory overload and it starts freaking out and it wants to go back inside. And you can take it back inside or it'll jump off of you and run back inside. Sensory overload. There's too much beyond the world that it was raised in for it to accept the circumstances that it finds itself in once you take it outside. Human beings are very similar. I've been listening to this audiobook series called The Expanse. It started out as an RPG game, and then it became a book series and it became a show. But there's this section of humanity that's been raised out in the outer planets in what they call the belt. And since there's so much ice and there's so much water that can be mined from asteroids, meteors, in the planets beyond any central planets, they spend most of their lives out in space because they live in places where there is less gravity, far below the G's that we experience on Earth just living here. Their bodies become a little bit longer, a little bit more, elongated. And when a belter goes to Earth, goes in that spaceship, they've always been in spaceships their entire lives. They touch down on Earth and they come out of the spaceship. It's not quite directly that. They'll go into a port or whatever. But stepping out into Earth, not just the landscape, but mainly the sky drives them crazy, and they want to go back into the spaceship. Most of them go mad. The sensory overload is so much. They step out into a horizon that is so vast because they're on Earth. You can just step out into the world, and for all of their lives, they might have gone into enclosures that were dozens of feet high, hundreds of feet high. But when you step below that grand horizon, that is, stepping onto a planet that you can breathe the air and then see up into the sky, it is terrifying. it is remarkable in the worst way. Even if it is, once you think about it macro, uh, remarkable in the best way. So, what is it to to be a part of that environment? If you're in a world where you have limited options for consumption or possessions, every little thing becomes a bigger part of your experience of reality. A cigarette means more. A pillow means more. The few people that you have in your life mean more. It becomes a bigger picture. You're more focused in on the little things that you do have in your life rather than the bigger. And it's not always about size in that sense. Somebody who's very wealthy or rich, they might have many cars. If you just have one car and you rely on that car to take you where you need to go, or you just have a few outfits and those are the only things that you can wear to wherever you need to go, for whatever job you're doing or wherever you need to go as a person, casual wear, your universe becomes smaller. That doesn't mean that your universe or your landscape as a human being is smaller. It just means that what you rely upon has fewer options. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's also not a good thing. It's not a bad thing or a good thing. But learning to value the few things that you have when you have so little, I think oftentimes adds to your humanity, your understanding of what you do have compared to if you had so much more. There's this story, well, it's more history, there's this cave that's tens of thousands of years old in France. This is kind of an art story in a way. And there's this cave in it that goes, the cavernous system goes for miles and miles. And I think about 3 miles in, we being human beings, discovered, after all these different caves, and there's certain sections that get very narrow and you have to climb through them just by yourself. You can't stand up. You just crawl through. Then there's a big cave, and then you crawl through again. There's all these sections where you have to work your way through. And sometimes a lot of the time you can't stand up. You have to crawl through. It's that claustrophobic. And about 3 miles in, there were multiple paintings done by what seemed to be people of caveman level of consciousness and, development. Very basic, not necessarily images of, it wasn't buffalo, but various buffalo type forms and plants painted upon this wall. But the ingredients that these people used to paint these things were very basic. They didn't have complicated ways to mix different ingredients and make a complicated painting system or ink. They only had, what they could kind of mix up. So 3 miles in, somebody, in order to paint this, And we think that this is a part of an initiation ritual for manhood or what have you. They had to have a pouch, probably like a animal pouch of paint, some kind of like leather pouch of paint that, ground up plants, very basic kind of paint with some moisture in there. And you had to take as many torches as you might need, and you had to light one torch from another. But the initiation process was, imagine going 3 miles into a cave system where for maybe a half of it you had to crawl, you couldn't even stand up, to paint plants, animals, and human beings on this cave wall as a part of initiation process. That is remarkable. How big was that person's world? Was it so minute that they couldn't imagine anything beyond? Or did they make it so minute that that was their initiation process? They're focusing on things so small when they could have focused on things that are bigger, because they saw the value in focusing on something small. Seeing the tiny things in our lives as something that hints at the vaster purpose and the vaster essence of what we are as human beings, and how we can truly understand who we are. Because who we are, no matter how big it gets, if we understand the small things, the little stems in a leaf, the granular nature of dirt, if we look at it, understand the small things, I think that we can understand the grander things. But it's not about understanding the small or the grander. It's about understanding. So what you focus on, whether it is small or big, everything, we're all trying to figure the same thing out. No matter how small your life is, no matter how few people you have in your life, if you try to understand them and the things that you do have in your life, somebody who knows more people, owns more things, makes more money, that doesn't matter anymore. The people who get those things, they think it matters. But I think at the end, they realize, if I just understood this, one person to a greater degree, I would understand myself as a person more. If I understood the nature of a leaf, and I just looked at a leaf, contemplated it, meditated upon it, perhaps I could have realized the whole ecosystem. These are the things that humans are. We want to understand the big, but if we focus intently and completely on the small, then the big doesn't matter, but also the big is understood. We're human beings, and we're not going to get everything right, and we're not going to be able to understand everything. But sometimes, if we look very closely, we can understand the small things. And then that gives us insight, I think, into everything that is big. At any rate, thank you very much for watching. I hope this was interesting. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them down in the comment section on YouTube. If you like this video at all, hit that thumbs up down there. It really helps out the channel. And please subscribe if you like content like this. And all of you, find yourselves, find your center, and have a wonderful day.